Good afternoon, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update on Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Once again, still a Category 2 strength tropical cyclone offshore from southeastern Queensland, but on final approach now to Brisbane and the Gold Coast, where a landfall at Category 2 strength proportions is expected in about 36 hours' time on North Stradbroke Island. This is a very significant tropical cyclone threat and will be a historic cyclonic impact to the southeastern corner of Queensland and the northeastern corner of New South Wales. If this tropical cyclone is affecting you, stick around to the end of the video to make sure you get all of the relevant information on how to prepare and endure this tropical cyclone. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's just jump straight into things right now with a look at Tropical Cyclone Alfred. You can see, like I said, offshore from the southeastern corner of Queensland, it's wrapping itself up quite nicely. Again, obviously not rooting for this system, that's for sure, but the system is certainly getting itself more and more organised by the hour, and it's looking more and more impressive as well offshore from Queensland. Certainly a very dire situation right now. The only concern that I have with the storm structure, which is a bit of good news for Queensland right now, is the fact that the rainfall wall and the southern eye wall, which has historically been the most dominant side of the system, has swung around to the western side of the system here, and it's weakened off substantially. And whilst this system does look still really organised, it's mainly a wind threat right now, and the rainfall threat really hasn't materialised quite yet for the southeastern parts of Queensland. We were expecting this rainfall to really be beginning to get to a problematic status by later on this afternoon and evening, and whilst there are still some heavy showers moving through parts of Queensland and New South Wales, they haven't really piped up yet in the dramatic fashion that we were expecting them to. Still, there are plenty of rainfall in this tropical cyclone's core, and don't let it deceive you. Whilst it doesn't look that good right now, it looks really raggedy for a tropical cyclone, it's still a very powerful system, and it is going to be a very strong and significant impact to the southeastern corner of Queensland right now. Let's jump into the forecast right now and briefly talk about what this system is expected to be doing movement-wise over the next couple of days, using the Access G3 forecast model, which has the best track forecast that I can find on this system right now. Again, with that landfall now expected on North Stradbroke Island later on tomorrow night into very early Friday morning, you can see here, that's what's distributed between the forecast model and exactly in line with what the Bureau of Meteorology is taking here. So the landfall has been moved about 20 kilometres north compared to what we were saying this morning. It doesn't really change the forecast too much for the Gold Coast and down in towards the southeastern parts of Queensland and through the northeastern parts of New South Wales. In fact, it really changes hardly anything. This storm will then move over Coomera and Sanctuary Cove and then into Logan City just south of Brisbane, then moving through Brisbane Friday morning after that second landfall that's expected to happen around midnight tomorrow night around the Russell Island sort of area. You can see then moving through, like I said, that Logan City area and then into the southern suburbs of Brisbane and then out towards Ipswich, where it will then be downgraded to a tropical low strength system by sunrise on Friday morning, and then heading further inland and really slowing down in its movements as it gets itself out towards Gatton and then Toowoomba later on Friday night. So again, this really significant tropical cyclone coming ashore as Category 2 strength proportions. I feel like the axis is pretty much perfect all around in terms of what it's saying for intensity, what it's saying in terms of track here. So I really do think that the axis is the model to be using, and this is exactly how Tropical Cyclone Alfred will pan out. It's not often that I say that I agree wholeheartedly with the Access G3 forecast model, considering that it is a convective forecast model and it throws out some really wacky predictions every now and then, but in this case here, I think that the axis has done a really good job with this tropical cyclone. You can see peak wind gusts as this system approaches landfall between 130 up to 140 kilometres an hour. The Bureau of Meteorology has highlighted the chance of wind gusts between South Stradbroke Island down through the Gold Coast, Coolangatta, Tweed Heads, Burleigh Heads, and then down towards Byron Bay, with a chance of peaking out at about 150 kilometres an hour, and I do agree with that, especially for a very exposed coastal locations like Burleigh Heads and Tweed Heads. I do feel like wind gusts there will max out at about 150 kilometres an hour. Anything stronger than that will be not only unprecedented, but also highly unlikely, just considering this tropical cyclone would have to intensify substantially more, and as always with these strong tropical cyclones and these scary tropical cyclones, they tend to make a landfall at night. This is exactly what Tropical Cyclone Alfred is looking to be doing here. The whole process up towards landfall, you can see the strong winds developing around the tropical cyclone and developing along the Queensland coastline from later on tonight, and I imagine you can already feel it as well if you're along the Queensland coastline, but you can see with Tropical Cyclone Alfred those destructive winds expected to develop from about lunchtime tomorrow, with winds already approaching 125 kilometres an hour by lunchtime tomorrow around Tweed Heads and Burleigh Heads, and then up through Coolangatta and up towards the Gold Coast as well. Very destructive wind gusts in excess of 150 kilometres an hour are possible around the coastline beginning tomorrow afternoon, and then through tomorrow evening it's going to be bang time with this rainfall and this wind here really picking up when that sun goes down. You can see maximum winds expected around the Gold Coast as we get out towards midnight. Winds then slowly beginning to ease off into the very early hours of Friday morning. They'll still be cyclonic right out till about sunrise, and then it looks like for the Gold Coast and then areas further south of that, those winds will steadily ease off through Friday morning. It'll take them a couple more hours to ease off as this storm moves further inland. The winds swing around to the northeast, around the Brisbane airport sort of area and through Redcliffe and into the Moreton Bay area, so again some pretty strong winds expected there on the backside of this tropical cyclone. We could be seeing wind gusts moving into the Brisbane airport area, which will no doubt be closed throughout tomorrow and into Friday as well. But through Friday morning, peak wind gusts around the Brisbane airport, the Redcliffe area, and all along the Moreton Bay coastline could be up to 110 to 125 kilometres an hour. Really strong wind gusts indeed. Into the Brisbane metro area, winds won't really exceed 110 kilometres an hour, which is nothing unheard of for the Brisbane metro area. But in terms of these super strong wind speeds, they're still going to be really strong, and they're going to feel some really gnarly impacts around the Brisbane metro area and into the southern suburbs as well, where the tropical cyclone's destructive core will pass directly over as a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone through Logan City and then over Brisbane. The wind gusts there could be well in excess of 100 kilometres an hour, up to about 125 kilometres an hour for brief periods through Thursday night into very early Friday morning. That's a lot of talk, and if I have left your head spinning on these wind speed forecasts, then please do let me know in the comments section down below. Further inland and in more mountainous areas around the Gold Coast hinterland, then even as far inland as Boonah and Beaudesert, and even out towards Warwick, damaging wind gusts between 90 and 110 kilometres an hour are expected, with brief periods of destructive wind gusts up to 125 kilometres an hour possible as this tropical cyclone weakens through the Brisbane metro area, and then out towards Gatton through Friday morning and into early Friday afternoon, and those wind speeds will drop off very quickly once the system gets out towards Toowoomba. Wind speeds there seldom above 80 kilometres an hour by the looks of things. There'll still be some pretty blowy winds around the Toowoomba area as this system moves further inland, but those winds really a lot weaker, and as this tropical cyclone moves further inland, those winds through Friday night into Saturday morning will then begin to ease off around the Moreton Bay area and down the Gold Coast, the winds taking all through Saturday to really drop off from gale force, and then it looks like those winds will then very quickly drop off through Saturday night into Sunday morning. So it's going to be a prolonged tropical cyclone impact. They're certainly going to get an absolute thrashing here along the Queensland coastline, and it goes without saying as well, further south down through New South Wales, down through Byron Bay, Lismore, and as far south as Yamba, expecting an absolute belting from Alfred as well, as that landfall process occurs from tomorrow afternoon through tomorrow night into early Friday morning, and those winds again not dropping off around the northeastern corner of New South Wales until about lunchtime on Friday, when they will fall below that damaging wind threshold of about 90 kilometres an hour. Still going to be quite strong along the coastline, very blowy indeed, and very dangerous to be out. Those winds finally dropping off in New South Wales, or on the New South Wales side of things, by about midnight on Friday, and again following behind that by a couple of hours, those winds will then drop off around the southeastern corner of Queensland in the first couple of hours of Saturday. Certainly some really significant wind gusts expected. Just breaking that up in terms of maximum wind gusts, let's start in the north, where the tropical cyclone warning is issued as far north as Double Island Point. Peak wind gusts there possible up to about 90 kilometres an hour. For Noosa, on the backside of this tropical cyclone through Friday morning and into early Friday afternoon, we could be seeing wind gusts up to about 110 kilometres an hour through there. Maroochydore and Mooloolaba around the same time, wind gusts up to 110 kilometres an hour also possible. Through Bribie Island, Redcliffe, and then down in towards the Brisbane area, the Brisbane River mouth, and the Brisbane Port and Airport areas, we could be seeing wind gusts topping out at 130 kilometres an hour through the early hours of Friday morning and out till about lunchtime on Friday. For Moreton Island and North Stradbroke Island, where the landfalls are possible at this time, or North Stradbroke Island is where the landfall is expected to happen. Moreton Island should dodge the landfall. Peak wind gusts there through Thursday night into early Friday morning will top out at about 135 kilometres an hour. Further south through Sanctuary Cove, Logan City and Coomera, peak wind gusts will be up to 125 kilometres an hour, and on South Stradbroke Island, where the landfall is expected to occur, wind gusts up to 150 kilometres an hour are possible. For the Gold Coast metro area through Nerang and the entirety of the Gold Coast, wind gusts up to 130 kilometres an hour are possible, with isolated stronger wind gusts expected down towards Burleigh Heads, with gusts up to 140 kilometres an hour possible, and then down towards Coolangatta and Tweed Heads, where wind gusts up to 150 kilometres an hour are possible. South of that, down to Byron Bay, peak wind gusts up to 140 kilometres an hour expected there. Ballina slightly weaker at 130 kilometres an hour, and then down towards Yamba is where the destructive winds then begin to drop off, with peak wind gusts around Yamba along the coastline expected to be up to 110 kilometres an hour. South of that, down to Coffs Harbour, Nambucca Heads, Kempsey, Port Macquarie, down towards Taree and Forster, winds will be between 90 and 110 kilometres an hour, getting steadily weaker and shorter lived the further south you get, and peak wind gusts into the more elevated areas, depending on how exposed you are, could be anywhere between 90 and 125 kilometres an hour. I hope that summarised it up quite nicely. Extrapolate whereabouts you are, and if you live further inland, the wind gusts will obviously be substantially weaker, but make sure you are fully prepared by the time this video releases. You must be fully prepared for those wind gusts. Your house needs to be boarded up. You need to be in an interior part of your house. You need to be fully prepared, because once this video is live, the conditions are going to be way too hazardous to get out and about around the Gold Coast area a couple of hours after I'm recording this. Again, like as you can see on the radar imagery with the satellite overlaid. Conditions already very quickly deteriorating across parts of the Gold Coast. Tweed heads down towards Byron Bay, where winds are already blowing at 75 kilometres an hour, and it's not going to be long until those winds start blowing at that kind of speed around the Gold Coast area either. So again, these preparations must be rushed to completion, and you must be either completed them or be very close to completing them, especially for the northeastern corner of New South Wales and around the Gold Coast. Around the Brisbane area, you've probably got into the later hours of tonight until the conditions really begin to deteriorate through there, but still, you need to be rushing your preparations to completion right now. Another really significant impact with this tropical cyclone, which is causing some pretty big headaches as well, and you must be prepared for this as well, is the rainfall threat. And you can see 3-day rainfall accumulations are going to be huge across southeastern Queensland into the northeast of New South Wales. Once again, I'm going to use the Axis G3 forecast model. I feel like it's painting a really accurate picture of what rainfall is expected, although I do believe that it is a little bit too high once you get up towards the Brisbane area north of the landfall site. Now, considering that this system is dominated on the south and the southwestern side of its core as well, and into the southeastern side as well, the rainfall is going to be at its heaviest on the southern side of the landfall, and same with the impacts are going to be at their most severe on the southern side of the landfall, and the northern side will comparatively receive much lighter impacts from this tropical cyclone. So you can see from the Axis G3 forecast, rainfall accumulations are quite high up towards Kubeltrua, and then they start to fall off quite significantly up there. In terms of rainfall accumulations, starting in the north and heading south, Maroochydore about 100 millimetres, Caloundra up to 125 millimetres are expected over the next 3 days, with the majority of that falling in the landfall process. And on the backside of that, rainfall will be at its heaviest Friday morning for both Maroochydore, Mooloolaba, Noosa and Caloundra. Rainfall accumulations up to 150 millimetres for Bribie Island and 150 millimetres as well for Kubeltrua. Again, the majority of that rainfall starting very late Thursday night into Friday morning, and it won't begin to ease off until later Friday afternoon. For Brisbane, rainfall accumulations on this forecast are much higher than what will actually happen. I'm expecting about 150 to 200 millimetres around the Brisbane metro area, the majority of that falling, like I said, in that early hours of Friday morning. Rainfall accumulations will then really begin to pick up once you get down towards Logan City, and then again further they're picking up as you get down towards Coomera and Sanctuary Cove. Rainfall accumulations around Logan City will be up to 250 millimetres. Along the outer islands, rainfall accumulations up to about 250 millimetres as well. Coomera and Sanctuary Cove up to 300 millimetres of rainfall. The Gold Coast as high as 350 millimetres of rainfall, and accumulations up to 400 millimetres possible along the coastline over the next 3 days, with about 250 millimetres of that falling in as little as 8 hours as this tropical cyclone begins landfall later on tomorrow night and into early Friday morning for Tweed Heads, Coolangatta and down towards Byron Bay. Accumulations will then fall off between 200 and 400 millimetres between Byron Bay down towards Yamba, and then between 100 and 200 millimetres along the coastline between Yamba right down towards Forster, with higher accumulations expected inland from Coffs Harbour, with falls up to 500 millimetres expected around both Ebor and Origo outside of Coffs Harbour and Nambucca Heads. Rainfall accumulations into the Gold Coast hinterland are going to be huge, with 3-day rainfall accumulations as high as 700 millimetres possible. Widespread falls around that 500 millimetre mark expected into the Springbrook National Park, flowing in towards the Hinds Dam and the Nerang River and the Coomera Rivers as well, and then draining further south down through Murray-Willumbah, and then down through the Wilson River into the Richmond River through Lismore, and then down towards Ballina respectively. Some huge rainfall accumulations between 500 and 700 millimetres expected in those catchments, which will cause life-threatening flash and riverine flooding, and major riverine flooding is expected right through the Gold Coast hinterland and into the Byron Bay hinterland as well, into the northeastern corner of New South Wales. Rainfall accumulations will be a little bit lighter further inland, Bow Desert, even though it is still nestled quite far inland and around mountains. Rainfall accumulations there shouldn't be anything more than 300 millimetres. Boona about 200 millimetres expected there. Along the border out towards Wollongong, and then further inland out towards Stanthorpe, accumulations between 100 to 200 millimetres possible there. Warwick about 100 millimetres of rainfall can be expected. Between the forecast models, it's still rather uncertain what rainfall is going to fall out towards Toowoomba. Most forecast models suggesting in the next 3 days only about 50 to 100 millimetres expected there, but as we push this forecast through this weekend, when the storm will actually stall over around the Toowoomba area, rainfall accumulations could be as high as 200 millimetres out towards Toowoomba. Again, I wouldn't really be getting our hopes up for really significant rainfall accumulations out there at this time, but again, some massive rainfall accumulations possible as this tropical cyclone begins its recurve down the New South Wales coastline, and we'll just take a bit of a glimpse at that. You can see this is the GFS forecast through here, which is a little bit loopy at this time, but it's calling for this tropical cyclone to hug the southeastern corner of Queensland Queensland and swing around on itself for a little bit, funneling in some more rainfall through this weekend into the Gold Coast hinterland and into the northeast of New South Wales. Not so much reciprocated between the major forecast models, but you can see there's plenty of rainfall that's going to continue in the wake of this tropical cyclone through Friday and in towards Saturday as well. Keep in mind that this system will be very stubborn to get out of the Brisbane metro area, even though it will be at tropical low status and it's not going to stall over Brisbane as a tropical cyclone for an extended period of time. The tropical low and the remnant energy of this system will be very stubborn and very slow to get out of the southeastern corner of Queensland, with the rainfall being dragged down through Saturday and into Sunday morning and showers persisting through Monday and Tuesday as a cleanup hopefully gets underway through there. And it's going to be a cleanup, that's for sure. There's going to be lots of devastation in this area. Another massive threat from this tropical cyclone. I just feel like a broken record right now, talking, but it's the wave heights. This tropical cyclone boasting significant wave heights up to 8 meters around its storm center, with wind waves as high as 9 meters on the southern side. This is a very, very wavy and a very rough tropical cyclone, that's for sure. Some really significant wave heights are being reported from this tropical cyclone already at buoys offshore from Queensland and New South Wales. And those waves and surfs are starting to pick up now for the northeastern corner of New South Wales, with significant wave heights outside of Ballina and Lismore up to about 4 meters at this time. Those waves are only going to increase throughout the remainder of today. You can see those waves then really beginning to pick up through Thursday morning and into Thursday afternoon. And as this tropical cyclone's destructive core approaches the coastline, coinciding with a landfall that's going to happen early Friday morning by the looks of things, which will also be the time of the highest tide around the southeastern corner of Queensland when this storm is making landfall, with significant wave heights expected to be about 8 or 9 meters offshore here, and a storm tide expected to be about 2 meters above the highest astronomical tide. We're going to be seeing some really significant coastal inundation around the Gold Coast area. It is very lucky that a lot of the homes along the canals there are built a couple of meters above sea level, so they're unlikely to be significantly impacted, but I still strongly advise that you have sandbags around your home and property right now, just to protect stuff. If you've got cars, put them under a carport or in a garage and sandbag up the garage as well, and make sure that it is completely watertight in an event like this. It is imperative that everything is as safe and as sound and as secure as possible, because I imagine insurance companies are just going to turn around and either go belly up in an event like this, or they're just going to be saying, no, we can't insure you anymore, just because of the amount of damage that Tropical Cyclone Alfred is going to produce here. They're just not insured for tropical cyclones in the southeastern corner of Queensland, and I'm not sure how the insurance policies are going to work, because it is a subtropical climate, but I imagine a lot of people just aren't going to be insured for some of the damage that's going to occur from Tropical Cyclone Alfred, which is going to be very unfortunate. So again, throughout the remainder of today, making sure that everything is sandbagged up, and anyone that is in either a single-story house or along the single story of your house, the first story rather of your house, that every door, window, any access point that water could possibly find its way through is properly secured and sandbagged up, especially around the Gold Coast along the canals, and then over any flood-prone areas around the Nerang and the Coomera rivers as well, and then into the Northern Rivers section of New South Wales. Just make sure that you are all sandbagged up and ready for action here, because not only with the storm surge but also with the rainfall, even further inland, significant flash flooding is expected from this tropical cyclone. And again, because this is an unprecedented weather event, a lot of this rainfall is going to be coming through in a way that southeast Queensland has never seen before. So again, some really significant falls and some really significant accumulations and flooding is possible as a result of Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Certainly a very impressive system, that's for sure, and even though it's miles away from the coastline right now, about 350 kilometres away from Brisbane, I believe. That's just based off my eyeballs right now, but you can see, if we put the pointer here over in Brisbane in the centre of the tropical cyclone, you can see, yeah, it's about 350 kilometres an hour, kilometres away rather. That was a pretty good guess, to be honest. This tropical cyclone here is still wreaking havoc across the southeast of Queensland right now, and it certainly is a very, very concerning picture. Stay safe, stay calm, and stay ready for this tropical cyclone. It's a scary picture, but you can stay safe, and if you have acted to prepare your home and property, then you will be fine, and just make sure you are ready and off the roads and completely hunkered down by later on tonight, and enjoy this tropical cyclone as it comes through. It's going to be an exciting and a nerve-wracking 48 hours, that's for sure. I am urging everybody to stay safe, and I'm also wishing everybody in southeast Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales my best from here, from myself and from everybody here at CyclonesOZ as well, all the fans and supporters and channel sponsors. I really do wish everybody the best down in the southeast of Queensland, and thank you so much for all of the recent support in the videos as well. It's been heartwarming to be able to provide such a helpful service to all of the people across the southeast corner of Queensland. But that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all at the next storm. Goodbye.